ओम परतत्वे सदा लीनो रामकृष्ण समाज्ञया यो धर्म स्थापन रतो वीरेशम तम नमाम्यहम. So this idea is totally wrong, and what we have to do? Some you will tell us you have to go beyond. So this is the idea of Vedanta, that this world is a relative world. It is all unreal. It is a shadow, and unless you catch the reality, there is no meaning in the shadow. And in the shadow, these appearances of good and bad are there. They are very relative terms. So up till that we have studied. We find then that this world is neither optimistic nor pessimistic, because all is not bad. Something good is there. So it is not pessimistic, but all is not good. There is definitely bad. So it is not optimistic. It is a mixture of both. And as we go on, we shall find that the whole blame is taken away from nature and put upon our own shoulder. This is the most important sentence. What does it mean? Nature is neither good nor bad. We get good or bad experiences as per our past karmas. Vedanta has a very rigid karma theory. Though everything is illusion, though everything is Maya, may not be illusion, may be Maya, and yet within this Maya, what functions is our own karma, nothing else. Very, very important point we have got in our life, in our day-to-day life. We should not blame anyone or circumstances for the ills we are suffering. People read history also wrongly. When they read Mahabharata, they say in Hindi, honi thi ho gayi. That which was to happen, happened. That is not the meaning. Vyasadeva is telling that I am writing this to show that what is right will win. So the whole Mahabharata depends upon one single character, and that is Duryodhana. Duryodhana is outright bad. And so, you know one story? When Pandavas went to forest, Duryodhana took a procession to insult them. And in his arrogance, he wanted to take bath his whole people in a lake. And Gandharvas were taking bath there. Gandharvas are very powerful. So, Duryodhana's friends, Karna, Shakuni, Dushasan, ran away. And the Gandharvas arrested Duryodhana and tied him to his own chariot. Pandavas were nearby. So the people went shouting, the king is bound. Yudhishthira told Bhima and Arjuna, go and immediately get released him. Yudhishthira's character. They said that, let him die, what we should be concerned. Yudhishthira said, no, we may be quarreling, we may be 5, they may be 100. But if outside enemy is there, we are 105, don't forget. Go and release him. So Bhima and Arjuna went, fought with the Gandharvas. You may say the battle was equal or whatever. And that Chitraratha was the Gandharva sent by Indra. He had deliberately planned this. He wanted to insult Duryodhana more than Duryodhana wanted to insult Yudhishthira. So he said that I do not recognize any other king. I know Yudhishthira only as the king. I will take him in this condition to Yudhishthira, and what he orders I will follow. So Chitraratha, Arjuna, Bhima all went. Duryodhana tried to the chariot. And on seeing him, Yudhishthira said, release him, he is the king, release him. And then Chitraratha released him. He came back a few steps and sat at a point, dejected. His friends came out from the hiding and said, you are hero, you have released yourself. He said, no, Listen to what he says. The man who has never been my enemy, the man for whom I was enemy throughout my life, and to get released at his hand. Nothing worse can be like that. Give me poison, I want to die immediately. It did not react in his mind. That's in such a condition, let me make friends with him. And then Shakuni and others tell him, "Oh king, these up and downs always come." Then he said, "I will not live till I see Yudhishthir killed." That led to the war, nothing else. Mind you, it was Duryodhana the sole reason for the war. And he had to be killed. They had to die. So it is not what was destined that happened, but it was Duryodhana's karma that brought it about. It was Yudhishthira and others' karma that they won the war. So, what result we get is always the fruit of our past action. And this Swamiji says that we don't blame other people. Very common habit. I am suffering because of my husband, because of my wife, because of my father, because of my enemies, is totally wrong. Secondly, the circumstances where such what can I do, that is totally wrong. You get what you deserve. And this Swamiji is showing here that and as we go on, we shall find that the whole blame is taken away from nature and put upon our own shoulders. This is the meaning. And what is the solution? If your doership is real, you are suffering. If your doership is not real, you are free. So Swamiji is indicating here that we have to go towards freedom. You have to realize our own real nature, which is not the doer. Doer is this Mayic I, this illusory or unreal I. Not illusory, but unreal I. He is the doer. And so long as he is there, he will do good and bad and he will suffer happiness and misery. If you are happy, nobody else is responsible. Our own karmas are responsible. But that will always be temporary, because happiness is relative. It will resolve into misery again. So that is what is told by Swamiji here. Very important point of Vedanta. At the same time, the Vedanta shows the way out. Yes, good and bad will remain in the earth. And if we become free from the wrong idea that we are the doers, we will become free. At the same time, the Vedanta shows the way out, but not by denial of evil, because it analyzes boldly the fact as it is and does not seek to conceal anything. That is the common theme of the optimist. Oh, that you will ignore, you will get good always, you will always get good. That is not the solution. To make our eyes blind toward the evil is not the solution. You know, there is another illustration given in Vedanta and by Swamiji. A hare, a rabbit, when it is afraid of something, it hides its own face in the grass. Now you are hiding your own face, but you are exposing yourself to the enemy or whoever it is. So shutting our eyes to evil will not help us. But it analyzes boldly the fact as it is, that it is a mixture of good and evil, and does not seek to conceal anything. It is not hopeless, it is not agnostic. That means there is no hope, what we can do, good and bad are always there. That is not the Vedantic position. It has shown that so long as we are living in the unreal world, this is the fact. And not agnostic. We don't know what is our real nature. we don't know what is God. That is not Vedanta at all. It finds out a remedy, but it wants to place that remedy on adamantine foundation. Remedy is not forgetting. Some people, when misery comes, they drink wine to forget misery. They cannot forget permanently and they spoil themselves further. So that is not the solution. Not by shutting the child's mouth and blinding its eyes with something which is untrue. So we tell the children, if you are good, world will be good. And that is never the case. And when the child will find out in a few days, the world will always be of good and evil. And you will always commit mistake and will suffer. I remember when I was young, a young man's father died, his own father. He is telling in this indirect way. When I was young, a young man's father died and left him poorly off with a large family to support, and he found that his father's friends were unwilling to help him. He had a conversation with a clergyman who offered this consolation. Oh, it is all good. All is sent for our good. Now that may be the spiritual way, but not that some good in the worldly sense will come out of it. That is the old method of trying to put a piece of gold leaf on an old sore. It is a confession of weakness, of absurdity. It is wrong. The young man went away, and 6 months afterwards, a son was born to the clergyman, and he gave a Thanksgiving party to which the young man was invited. The clergyman prayed, "Thank God for his mercies." And the young man stood up and said, Stop, this is all misery. The clergyman asked, why? Because when my father died, you said it was good, though apparently evil. So now this is apparently good, but really evil. Is this the way to cure the misery of the world? Be good and have mercy on those who suffer. Do not try to patch it up. Nothing will cure this world. Go beyond it. So that is how he ends the para, go beyond it. That means know that it is unreal and find out the reality. That is the meaning of going beyond. This is a world of good and evil. Wherever there is good, evil follows. But beyond and behind all these manifestations, all these contradictions, the Vedanta finds out the unity. Beyond and behind. Understand these two words? Beyond is just now what I told, this is unreal, there is reality, transcendent. And behind means that is the Adhar, that is the base on which you are experiencing this. This is the superimposition. The reality is at the background. So beyond and behind, sometimes it is behind and beyond. Sarvatita, Sarvapi, Sarvatita, Sarva Adhar. You know Swamiji's prayer to Sri Ramakrishna in the Arati? Namo Namo Prabhu Vakya Manatita Mana Vachana Ekadhar. Prabhu, you are beyond mind and speech, and you are the one support of mind and speech. So that is called behind. All these contradictions, the Vedanta finds out that unity. That means one without a second reality, not two gods or two anything. One without a second reality through Maya appears always as a relative good and bad world. It says give up what is evil and give up what is good. That means give up relativity. What remains then? Behind good and evil stands something which is yours. Behind, that means when you transcend this, what you see behind, which is yours, the real you. So call it Atman or Brahman, sometimes it makes it objective. So he says real you. real you, beyond every evil and beyond every good too, and it is that which is manifesting itself as good and bad. That is that beyond and behind. That is important. Equal emphasis should be laid on the transcendence of God and immanence of God. It is beyond, and that itself appears as this. So, this is what is Vedanta, true Vedanta. Know that first, then we realize that. And then alone you will be a true optimist. Because now everything will be bliss. Bliss is our real nature. This good and bad will always be there. But if we go beyond and behind, we get our own real nature, which is bliss. And so you will be real optimist, true optimist, and not before. For then you will be able to control everything. If you attain the reality, you can control everything which is the appearance of that reality. Control these manifestations and you will be at liberty to manifest the real you. So control this, do not be involved in this. When you go beyond, you will find real you. First be master of yourself. Stand up and be free. Go beyond the pale of these laws, for these laws do not absolutely govern you. Law is only when the causation takes place, and Swamiji has already explained that time, space and causation is in our mind. It is not in reality, and if we realize the reality, we are beyond this jurisdiction of causation. So no laws hold us. For these laws do not absolutely govern you, they are only part of your being. It's a manifestation. Part means that which is through your mind, that part is governed by laws. First find out that you are not the slave of nature, never were and never will be. Nature, Prakriti, is appearance, you are never a slave. And never will be. That this nature, infinite as you may think it, is only finite. Because it's an appearance, it can never be infinite. But for us, when we are a part of it, we feel it as infinite. And when we find real myself, then this is finite. A drop in the ocean, and your soul is the ocean. Yes. Atman is all pervading. It contains this Prakriti. It contains many higher things in Swargas, and it is the reality, all these are appearances. And you are beyond the stars, the sun and the moon, they are all appearances. They are like mere bubbles compared with your infinite being. Yes. Maybe very, very big in our appearance, but compared to infinity, they are mere bubbles. These are the bold statements based upon the truth. Know that, and you will control both good and evil. Now it will be under your control, because that is an appearance, and you are the reality. You are one with the reality. You are not different from the reality. So when you realize it, all this will be under you. Then alone the whole vision will change, and you will stand up and say, how beautiful is good and how wonderful is evil. Because both are God's appearances. So the evil will appear as an appearance of God. Good will appear as another appearance of God. Good changes, becomes evil, all that will appear as appearance of God. And so, how beautiful is good and how wonderful is evil. That is what the Vedanta teaches. Transcendent immanent reality, realization of transcendent immanent reality, which is our own real nature. It does not propose any slipshod remedy by covering wounds with gold leaf, and the more the wound festers, putting on more gold leaf. Optimism, false optimism. This life is a hard fact. Work your way through it boldly. Though it may be adamantine, no matter, the soul is stronger. So long as we feel ourselves small, the walls are adamantine. When we realize our infinite nature, they all melt out. It lays no responsibility on little gods, for you are the another view, especially in India, these days everywhere. The stars control my life. Stars have no power to control us. Absolutely false idea. What astrology can tell us, those who are students of statistics may understand. It is a probability. How astrology was created, Swami has shown it. Thousands of years, the data was compared. And when the stars are like this, the life is like that. Not because of the stars. But the same causes which were your cause are the causes of stars being like that, or you being born like that and like that. So there is no cause and effect relation between the position of stars or any gods, Shani scope and this and that, all this humbug. That is not the Vedantic way. That puts us more and more under the trap of the unreal things, and more we suffer. It lays no responsibility on little gods, for you are the makers of your own fortunes. You make yourself suffer, you make good and evil, and it is you who put your hands before your eyes and say it is dark. Take your hands away and see the light. You are effulgent. In a previous chapter, Swami has told that mist has come between ourselves and the sun. Like that, mist has come between ourselves and our own real nature. And so, a small patch of cloud, or as Swamiji tells here, closing the eyes or putting 4 fingers before the eyes and see it is dark. Sun is never hidden. Clouds can never cover the sun. You go beyond the clouds and see the sun. So you remove the strap and you see the sun. So go beyond the unreal world and catch the reality. Take your hands away and see the light. You are effulgent. You are perfect already from the very beginning. That is being our real nature. Swayam Jyoti, existence, knowledge, bliss. So this knowledge or this light is always there. You have to just find it. We now understand the verse, he goes from death to death who sees the many here. So from Kathopanishad, he comes back to the Upanishad now and says, Mrityo samrityam gacchati saiva naneva pashyati. Here there is no manifold in reality, but one who sees the manifold goes from death to death. Swamiji says, now we understand that. How are we to see it? This mind, so deluded, so weak, so easily led, even this mind can be strong and may catch a glimpse of that knowledge, that oneness which saves us from dying again and again. When we find our real nature, we find we are never dying. As rain falling upon a mountain flows in various streams down the sides of the mountain, so all the energies which you see here are from that one unit. It has become manifold, falling upon Maya. These are mantras of the Kathopanishad. Yatho yatha udakam durge vrishtam parvateshu vidhavati. Do not run after the manifold. Go toward the one. He is in all that moves. He is in all that is pure. He fills the universe. He is in the surface. So that is next section of the second chapter of Kathopanishad. He is in all that moves. All that moves is his appearance. He is in all that is pure, Shuddham. He fills the universe. He is in the sacrifice. That means any karma. He is the guest in the house. Guest in the house, he has come. Or the fire which we burn in the house, he is there. He is in man, in water, in animals, in truth. He is the great one. He is just reading from the Kathopanishad here. As fire coming into this world is manifesting itself in various forms, even so, that one soul of the universe is manifesting himself in all these various forms. Agnir yathaiko bhunam pravishta rupam rupam pratirupo bhavuva. If fire catches in the forest, it is like the forest fire. In house, it is like the house fire. So according to the thing it's burning, it shows. Similarly, God is immanent in all. As the outside appearance, it is as if God appears like that. Another example is still beautiful. As air coming into this universe manifests itself in various forms, even so the one soul of the souls of all beings is manifesting himself in all forms. One more word is there, Bahishcha. In Vayu or Agni, Bahishcha. That means he is in all these forms and is beyond the forms also. Air is manifesting itself through all these forms, but is really beyond this. So that is his nature, that is our own real nature. This is true for you when you have understood this unity and not before. Rather, when you have realized this unity and not before. Even when you understand you are like that, you raise yourself above that. Then is all optimism, because he is seen everywhere. So when I say, you call it him or mine, it does not change. I see him within me, I see him outside. Then it is nature of bliss. So he is happy. The question is that if all this be true, that pure one, the self, the infinite, has entered all this, how is it that he suffers? How is it that he becomes miserable, impure? He does not, says the Upanishad. This I is an apparent I. Real I does not suffer. So he does not suffer. As the sun is the cause of the eyesight, Suryo yatha sarvalokasya chashtu na drishyate chakshushair bahya doshai. As the sun is the cause of the eyesight of every being, yet is not made defective by the defect in any eye. Even if you have cataract, we do not have cataract, we see only because of the sunlight. But cataract has not gone to the sun, it is in our eyes. Even so, the self of all is not affected by the miseries of the body or by any misery that is around you. I may have some disease and see everything yellow, but the sun is not affected by it. He is the one, the creator of all, the ruler of all, the internal soul of every being. This is all Upanishadic mantras. He who makes his oneness manifold, his oneness, he appears as many. Thus, sages who realize him as the soul of their soul, unto them belongs eternal peace, none else unto none else. There are two mantras, perhaps this is a misprint here. In the first mantra, it talks of happiness, in the second mantra of peace. So, The sages who realize him as the soul of their souls, unto them belongs eternal happiness. Unto none else, unto none else. He who in this world of evanescence finds him who never changes, Nityo Anityanam. He who in this universe of death finds that one life, he who in this manifold finds that oneness, Eko Bhavanam. And all those who realize him as the soul of their soul, to them belongs eternal peace, unto none else, unto none else. In the second mantra, peace. In the first mantra, happiness. Please correct it or write down. Where to find him in the external world? Where to find him in the suns and moons and stars? That is another mistake. We go on searching for God everywhere. Either through science or through religious superstition. There the sun cannot illumine, nor the moon, nor the stars. The flash of lightning cannot illumine the place, what to speak of this mortal fire. The meaning is that if it is an object, it's not only poetry. If it is an object, we require light to illuminate. It is not an object. So all the known lights are taken, sun, moon, stars, flash of lightning, fire. All that they fail to illuminate him because he is not an object. He is the light itself. He is the source of the light of all these. He shining, everything else shines. न तत्र सूर्यो भाति न चंद्र तारकम ने मा विद्युतो भांति कुतोयम अग्नि तमेव भांतम अनुभाति सर्वम तस्य भासा सर्वमिदं विभाति. It's his shine that everything shines. He is shining, everything shines. Because he is consciousness, so there are appearances of light. He is the light of all the lights. He is shining, everything else shines. It is his light that they have borrowed and is shining through them. It is another beautiful simile. Now, this is something which Gita has apparently borrowed from Kathopanishad, same idea as both, and Swamiji is giving that. An allegory is built up, telling that Brahman is the root of the tree which is the world. That Swamiji is now quoting. Here is another beautiful simile. Those of you who have been in India and have seen how the banyan tree comes from one root and spreads itself around. Now, I do not know whether there are no banyan trees in other countries, but Swamiji is inviting them to India to see the banyan tree. How the banyan tree comes from one root and spreads itself far around, and we'll understand this. He is that banyan tree. He is the root of all and has branched out until he has become this universe. And however far he extends, every one of these trunks and branches is connected through him. Now, because the human life is important, that is told in Kathopanishad in this way, that heavens are there, but there you do not know the nature of reality, because enjoyments are more. In man's life, you see him as you see your reflection in mirror. Very significant statement. The cleaner the mirror, the better you see your reflection. If the mirror is absolutely plain and absolutely clean, you see yourself as you are. And once you know your real nature, you realize it. In other lokas, other heavens, the vision will be blurred. Various heavens are spoken of in the Brahmana portion of the Vedas. I have told you about the Brahmana portion. Vedas consist of Sangita, Brahmana and Aranya. Sangita are the praises of gods. And then how to utilize those gods for our little happinesses. That is the Brahmana portion. And there they speak, if you use this heaven, you will go to this heaven. If you do this, you will go to that heaven. Various heavens are spoken of in the Brahmana portion of the Vedas, but the philosophical teaching of the Upanishads gives up the idea of going to heaven. Happiness is not in this heaven or in that heaven, it is in this soul. Places do not signify anything. Little better happiness and great misery in heaven, you know that? Atishaya Yuktam. That means gods feel that Indra has more power than us. Indra feels I am the king, but people respect Brihaspati more. Brihaspati feels I am the priest, I am the teacher, and Indra has more powers. So among the gods there is always a jealousy, and so they cannot be happy. Happiness is not in this heaven or in that heaven, it is in the soul. Places do not signify anything. Here is another passage which shows the different states of realization. States of realization of the reality. In the heaven of the forefathers, as a man sees things in a dream, so the real truth is seen, blurred, dream. As in dream, we see things hazy and not so distinct, so we see the reality there. There is another heaven called the Gandharva, in which it is still less clear. As a man sees his own reflection in water, so is the reality seen there, always blurred reflection. The highest heaven of which the Hindus conceive is called Brahma Lokas. There man is united with Brahman. Identity is different from unity. Identity means we are not two. Unity means we two are one. So two ideas there. That is called Brahma Loka, and that is a place where we can go further. The highest heaven of which the Hindus conceive is called the Brahma Loka, and in this the truth is seen much more clearly like light and shade. Chaya Tapo is the vision in Brahma Loka. But not yet quite distinctly. But as a man sees his own face in a mirror, perfectly distinct and clear, so is the truth shining in the soul of man. Swamiji has put it last, though in the Upanishad it is before, to show the contrast that here you can realize God more easily. The highest heaven, therefore, is in our own souls. The greatest temple of worship is the human soul. Greater than all heavens, says the Vedanta. For in no heaven anywhere can we understand the reality as distinctly and clearly as in this life, in our own soul. Changing places does not help one much. Within the earth, I thought while I was in India that the cave would give me clearer vision. I found it was not so. Then I thought the forest would do so. Then Varanasi. But the same difficulty existed everywhere because we make our own worlds. Yes, our world is colored by our minds. Wherever we go, we carry it. If I am evil, the whole world is evil to me. That is what the Upanishad says. And the same thing applies to all worlds. If I die and go to heaven, I should find the same. For until I am pure, it is no use going to caves or forests or to Varanasi or to heaven. And if I polish my mirror, it does not matter where I live. If the mirror is clear. If my mind is pure, Jesus says, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Same everywhere. And how to make the mind pure? By unselfishness and devotion to God. If I polish my mirror, it does not matter where I live. I get the reality just as it is. So it is useless running hither and thither and spending energy in vain, which should be spent only in polishing the mirror. The same idea is expressed again. None sees him, none sees his form with the eyes. It is in the mind, in the pure mind, that he is seen. If you see something with the eyes, it is an object. But if you see in the pure mind, it is a reflection of reality, and we can realize that. It is in the mind, in the pure mind, that he is seen, and then immortality is gained, because that is our real nature. Body is mortal, we are not mortal. Those who were at the summer lectures on Raja Yoga will be interested to know that what was taught then was a different kind of yoga. Yoga means method of realizing the reality. And there, control this, control that, control breath, control your mind, all that was spoken of. And here, realize this. Come to light, transcend everything, and you will get the light. Was a different kind of yoga. The yoga which we are now considering consists chiefly in controlling the senses. When the senses are held as slaves by the human soul, when they can no longer disturb the mind, then the yogi has reached the goal. So control of senses, not only directly control of the mind. When control of the senses, mind becomes tranquil. How to control? That is different. In Raja Yoga, will only is used, and here knowledge is used. How? When all vain desires of the heart have been given up, then this very mortal becomes immortal. Yes. Kama yasya hridhi shrita, atha martyo amruto bhavati. Then he becomes one with God even here. When all the knots of the heart are cut asunder, then the mortal becomes knots of the heart. One knot of the heart, ajnana, wrong knowledge. Knots of the heart, complexes built due to ajnana. And when they are cut asunder, then the mortal becomes immortal and he enjoys Brahman here on this earth, nowhere else. A few words ought to be said here. So up to now I was reading from the Upanishad mantra after mantra, now he is commenting upon that. A few words ought to be said here. You will generally hear that the Vedanta, the philosophy and other Eastern systems look only to something beyond, letting go the enjoyments and struggles of this life. That is a comment by ignorant people. This idea is entirely wrong. It is only ignorant people who do not know anything of Eastern thought and never had brain enough to understand anything of its real teaching that tell you so. Brain enough to understand. There are types of brains. Maybe expert in mathematics or philosophy or physics, but not in understanding the reality. On the contrary, we read in our scriptures, I am not condemning anybody. On the contrary, we read in our scriptures that our philosophers do not want to go to other worlds. Nothing after death, here itself. But depreciate them as places where people weep and laugh for a little while only and then die. So heavens also are thought like that. Not permanent heaven, they cannot be. As long as we are weak, we shall have to go through these experiences, but whatever is true is here, and that is the human soul. And this also is insisted upon, that by committing suicide, we cannot escape the another wrong idea. If you are suffering, people think, let me die. Death is not the solution. If your karmas are bad, you will have to suffer in the next life. Sufferings cannot go by suicide. Rather, suicide becomes a sin, and you add that to that. So that is not the way. To kill the body is not the way. To transcend the body is the way. We cannot escape the inevitable. We cannot evade it. But the right path is hard to find. The Hindu is just as practical as the Westerner, only we differ in our views of life. They say practical means you get more gold, you are practical. Hindu says if I get my reality, I am more practical. Because that solves my problems forever. The one says build a good house, let us have good clothes and food, intellectual culture and so on, for this is the whole of life. And in that he is immensely practical, the Westerner. But the Hindu says true knowledge of the world means knowledge of the soul, metaphysics, that is what is beyond. And he wants to enjoy that life. In America there was a great agnostic, Ingersoll, Swamiji met him, and he was a great lecturer in those days in America. A very noble man, character was good, a very good man and a very fine speaker. He lectured on religion which he said was of no use. That was his lecture. Why bother our heads about other words? So if heaven means going to some other words, what he said was true. He employed this simile. We have an orange here and we want to squeeze all the juice out of it. I met him once and said, I agree with you entirely. I have some fruit and I too want to squeeze out the juice. Our only difference lies in the choice of the fruit. You want an orange and I prefer a mango. Mango is not available except Indian subcontinent, anywhere in the world. You think it is enough to live here and eat and drink and have a little scientific knowledge? But you have no right to say that that will suit all tastes. Such a conception is nothing to me. If I had only to learn how an apple falls to the ground or how an electric current shakes my nerves, I would commit suicide. He is not committing suicide, he says, that is useless. I want to understand the heart of things, the very kernel itself. Your study is the manifestation of life. Mine is life itself. Reality. My philosophy says you must know that and drive out from your mind all thoughts of heaven and hell and all their superstitions, even though they exist in the same sense that this world exists. He is not denying the existence of heavens and hells. Just like this world exists, they also exist. This world is unreal, they are also unreal. This world is temporary, they are also temporary. I want to go beyond. I want to find the source of all this. I must know the heart of this life, the very essence, what it is, not only how it works and what are its manifestations. This how is given to science. Why is given to religion. I want the why of everything. Yes, just come to that. I want the why of everything. I leave the how to children. Yes, beautiful. Science only deals with how, not why. As one of your countrymen said, while I am smoking a cigarette, if I were to write a book, it would be the science of the cigarette. It is good and great to be scientific. God bless them in their search. But when a man says that is all, he is talking foolishly. You may do that, but that is almost nothing. Not caring to know the reason d'etre of life, the real reason. Never studying existence itself. I may argue that all your knowledge is nonsense. Without a basis, you are studying the manifestations of life, and when I ask you what life is, you say you do not know. You are welcome to your study, but leave me to mine. So practicality, Swamiji is explaining the Indian practicality. I am practical, very practical in my own way. So your idea that only the West is practical is nonsense. You are practical in one way and I in another. There are different types of men and minds. If in the East a man is told that he will find out the truth by standing on one leg all his life, he will pursue that method. If in the West men hear that there is a gold mine somewhere in an uncivilized country, thousands will face the dangers there in the hope of getting the gold, and perhaps only one succeeds. King Solomon's mines you can read. The same men have heard that they have souls, but are content to leave the care of them to the church. The first man will not go near the savages, the Aryan. He says it may be dangerous, but if we tell him that on the top of a high mountain lives a wonderful sage who can give him knowledge of the soul, he tries to climb up to him, even if he be killed in the attempt. Both types of men are practical, but the mistake lies in regarding this world as the whole of life. Yours is the vanishing point of enjoyment of the sense. There is nothing permanent in it. It only brings more and more misery, while mine brings eternal peace and happiness. I do not say your view is wrong, because it is your view. You are welcome to it. Great good and blessings come out of it in life, but do not therefore condemn my view. Mine also is practical in its own way. Let us all work on our own plans. Would to God all of us were equally practical on both sides. Generally, those who are expert in religion are not so practical in the outside world, and vice versa. I have seen some scientists who were equally practical, both as scientists and as spiritual men. Some scientists he has seen. And it is my great hope that in course of time the whole of humanity will be efficient in the same manner. When a kettle of water is Swamiji, this is another Vedantic optimism, that every man, because his real nature is Brahman, is bound to realize it one day or the other, bound to. When a kettle of water is coming to the boil, if you watch the phenomena, you find that one bubble rising and then another and so on, until at last they all join and a tremendous commotion takes place. This world is very similar. Each individual is like a bubble, and the nations resemble many bubbles. Gradually these nations are joining, and I am sure the day will come when separation will vanish and that oneness to which we are all going will become manifest. So all will come to that realization. A time must come when every man will be as intensely practical in the scientific world as in the spiritual, and then that oneness, the harmony of oneness, will pervade the whole world. The whole of mankind will become Jivan Mukta. That is Vedantic term. Means free while living. You don't have to die to go to heaven or anywhere. While living, you realize your own nature, you are free, though apparently you are still in the body. The whole of mankind will become Jivan Muktas, free while living. We are all struggling towards that one end through our jealousies and hatreds, through our love and cooperation. These are different lower and higher manifestations of our struggle. A tremendous stream is flowing towards the ocean, carrying us all along with it. And though, like straws and scraps of paper, we may at times float aimlessly about in the long run, we are sure to join the oneness of life and bliss. So that is called the Vedantic optimism. That being our real nature, one day we have to realize it. So that is how we have come to the end of this lecture, Unity in Diversity. Swamiji has read through the second chapter of the Kathopanishad and offered his own comments, and in that way we have finished the study of Kathopanishad in 2 lectures. Om Paratatve Sadalino Ramakrishna Samagyaya Yo Dharma Stapana Rato Vire Shamtam Namamyam. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hare Om Tat Sat. Sri Ramakrishna Arpanam.